welcome to Inspire Moms Interviews. This is going to be a segment on the blog where we interview inspiring people that have a story of hope and realness that I think will help you on your journey. So now that we're in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis, I had a couple of moms scheduled to do interviews, and since we are in the safe in place, at home kind of things by the governor mandate, those were unable to be filmed. So I thought, you know what, we might ought to add a kid interview, older kid, younger kids. Maybe that would be a great addition to the interview piece of the blog. So today we are going to interview a college student, which just so happens to be my daughter. And on occasion, we may even throw in a bonus interview with a dad or two. But I think today would be fitting if we talk to Shaylee about how her world has changed as a result of this pandemic. College students are so social, and this historic time of everybody being pushed home to do online learning, so I thought it would be good to just spend this time talking with her in the comforts of our home. So Shaylee, if you can just tell me a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you're majoring in, and then we'll talk about how the pandemic has affected you.
Yes, so hi, my name is Shaylee, and I go to Lee University in Cleveland, Tennessee. I'm the oldest of 5 children, and so I've always wanted to work with children as a profession. And so following that, I decided to be a biology major in hopes of pursuing a career as a physician's assistant, and so that's what I'm working towards right now.
Okay, wonderful. So at college, you have friends, you have study groups. I mean, you guys are always doing something fun, going to Starbucks, and then your world comes to this screeching halt. So reflect for just a few minutes on how this COVID-19 has affected you personally and at large with school and all of your life.
Yeah, so, spring break was happening around mid-March, so about a month ago, and everyone was just going home like normal, which I go to school 30 minutes away from my house, so I'm fortunate to already be close to home, but people are going on trips, going out of the country, going to different states, even going home to their home state, which it can be up to 19 hours away with a plane flight. So, everyone is going back, and we're assuming we'll be back together the next week, and what ended up being a week-long spring break turned into 2 weeks of spring break, and then the rest of the semester being canceled. So life turned around quickly in terms of academics and socially. As classes, we have classes every day and chapel twice a week, and all of that gets quickly put online and done all virtually. And so it was a quick shift that I don't believe anyone expected to come as soon as it did. Even though you hear about it in the news, it got very personal when it came to our college and our home state.
What's been your personal challenge? I mean, has it been trying to understand the material? How have the professors done, or how have you stayed connected? Tell me a little bit more.
Our president, Dr. Khan, which if you're not local, you wouldn't know about that, but he has been the president for about 35 years at Lee University, and so he's revered as like this icon, this legend. And he recently announced that he's stepping down and moving to a chancellor position. He announced that at the beginning of the school year, and so this was going to be his last semester. And so ironically, all of this is happening at the end of his term before the new president steps in. And so I believe that has had a significant role in the transition, the smooth transition that the professors have made to really invest in the students and get on their level in terms of learning the ways of social media and online ways of connecting with students and helping them in the best way possible. I thought it was going to be a lot rougher in a transition, but the professors have been readily accessible via email, and they have worked very diligently to prepare us in the best way as possible with material and exams, and also keeping in place personal interaction like chapels and clubs, and people are still meeting for their dorm small groups and all sorts of things that are not necessarily academic, but they're part of the academic college experience. And so they have shifted all of that to still being online, which has been more than I would have ever expected, and definitely beyond, I believe, what most people would have seen as a reality. So Lee has done, in my experience, our professors have been very willing to engage and readily accessible to help us in extra measures than normal.
Yeah, definitely. So it sounds like school's going well, as long as there's some challenges, I'm sure. What advice would you have for other college students that are in this crazy, historic, gap of time? I mean, at home, you're with your siblings more. I mean, do you have any tips that you would say, this is what I would do, or here's some things I've tried?
Yeah, a lot of people are all in a knot because of this so-called social distancing.
Mm-hmm.
And someone told me the other day, they said, it's not so much social distancing as it is physical distancing. So maybe if we, as college students especially, who are really engaged in obviously the lives of so many other students, being on campus and living with other people in dorms and constantly being in classes with all these people, maybe seeing it so much as a physical distancing versus a social distancing, meaning you can still be connected via Zoom, which is what a lot of universities are doing, mine included, or FaceTime, or even writing letters. A lot of my friends have started being pen pals and kind of going back to how we were in elementary school, reverting to the going back before technology kind of dominated the world, and just getting more on a level that is still intentional, but using the resources that we have. We are blessed with technology to still be able to connect with professors virtually and to be able to still have classes in a group setting online. So using those resources to still connect academically, but then as far as personally, if you have siblings, which I'm the oldest of 5, as I mentioned, I've really appreciated this time and enjoyed it as being able to spend time that I usually would be on campus to invest in my younger siblings and, watch a movie or go on a bike ride or to have a picnic. We've cooked more than we've ever cooked in my entire life combined. And so
the quarantine 15.
Yes. So just taking those experiences of the gift of time. Time is a gift, and the world is quite literally at a standstill right now, and so everyone has time on their hands. And so just using that time to be able to invest in your family in ways that you maybe wouldn't be able to otherwise.
Does it make you feel better that we're not the only ones? Like if you thought about it, and a lot of people are talking about the sacrifice, or this is so horrible. I've heard people say this is like a modern day Little House on the Prairie. I mean, do you feel that, or do you feel like this too shall pass and we're in this gap and, brighter days are ahead? I mean, are you being, do you feel like it's more of worry and fear plaguing you, or are you just kind of moving through and, wow, this is a cool story?
I think a little bit of both. I think naturally the human desire is the fear of the unknown, and that is what I think most people are grappling with during this season of life, is just the vastness of it, how it crosses all borders of status, of celebrity, of money, of any type of borders that can potentially divide people. This flattens it all, it affects everyone. And so I think that is a comfort in the fear of the unknown, is knowing that, everyone's going through this. Even your idols or your celebrities, they're experiencing the same so-called social distancing or physical distancing, But I do think that in terms of sacrifice, I have a hard time with that word because I read this quote, or I saw someone post about it, and it said, the older generation had to go to war to save our lives, to fight for our freedom, and now we're being asked to stay at home to save theirs. And so that kind of shifted my perspective in terms of realizing, sure, this is not our normal, and this is different than what we're used to, but why do we think that we have the right to just go about our own lives when so many lives are at stake? And even if it's not a death, which the older generation and people with pre-existing health conditions, medical conditions, are more highly at risk, even if it's not related to death, this is still affecting jobs and the economy and social gatherings, and
Absolutely.
It's so much more widespread than a disease. The disease is the prominent aspect of it, but there's so many other secondhand consequences that occur as a result. And so just being able to realize, I need to do my part, not only to prevent the spread of it, but to also just get our country, our nation, our world through this time of difficulty is not to me so much as a sacrifice as it is just doing the right thing and being able to say, you know, I'm doing what I believe is going to be best for myself and for our world. And honestly, I know that I'm blessed, and so sitting at home, cooking food, watching a movie, that doesn't seem to be much like a sacrifice to me. So just kind of shifting it in our minds as this is maybe not what we want, but this is what we need to do to help our world.
So Shaylee, with this historic time frame here, so much that's going on, like you said, it's been very interesting to hear your perspective. Are you doing anything personally to document this time? You know, journaling or writing some type of letter to yourself or a time capsule or videos? I don't know. What are you doing personally? Because I feel certain that your children one day will be in elementary school reading about this in the history books. So have you thought about that, or are you actively doing anything?
You know, I have. It's wild to think that what is our reality right now is going to be history, you know, in a few years when I have kids and I'm married and my kids will be reading about what we're going through right now, and I'll be looking back like, wow, I remember that time. But, you know, naturally everything fades with time. So I do want to be proactive in documenting this season, and some of the things that I've been doing is journaling. As a person of faith, as a Christian, I spend time in the Word and just in passages with people and figures in the Bible, just real people who struggled. And obviously it wasn't a pandemic, but similar struggles where there was just catastrophic events going on, and just looking at the wisdom from the Word and from Psalms. I spent a lot of time in Psalms and just looking at David's writings and relating that to our own lives, and also journaling. And right now, all the rage, the new app is TikTok, and I'm not personally, haven't really gotten onto the trend yet, but my siblings have been getting me into it during this time where we have countless hours on our hands. So we've been documenting with funny videos, just, you know, naturally there's going to be some jokes about the toilet paper and stuff like that, but keeping it all, you know, healthy, fun, humor, but also realizing the severity of the case at hand, and having fun and enjoyment during the process, you know, to stay uplifted and to keep from getting down, and, you know, just to stay positive, but at the same time realizing that we are going through a pandemic that will go down in history, and making the best of the time in light of that.
Absolutely. So I know I have heard of some personal friends and other moms on social media struggling with their college age students, kids, friends with, you know, this is no big deal. I'm not going to social distance. You're not going to tell me to stay home. What advice would you have for these moms that are struggling? Maybe there's rebellion, maybe there's just disagreeing. You've got college kids that had their own lives. They've lived at the dorm or at an apartment, and now they're back home and under the rules of the house. What advice would you give for those moms on how to get along yet still have rules, and to try to get through this without, you know, damaging your relationships with your children?
Yes, you know, I would say that this could be a really beneficial time in forming and strengthening that relationship with your college student. You know, as a college student myself, I have experienced the so-called freedom that every high schooler at some point, you know, desires and wants. And so I think that, like, of course it is a big transition coming back when you've, you know, been on your own or whatever you want to call that for several months, and then shifting back to being at home. And I've heard some of my friends say it's like being in high school again, and, you know, that kind of language. But I think that you can use this time as a moment to shift back to maybe where you never were, and maybe grow from where you were to where you could be, you know. And one of my friends, he was talking about how since being in college, his relationship with his parents have grown because he's become more into his, quote, own person, and grown spiritually and grown personally and matured in ways that he hadn't really expected to see himself in a couple years ago. So I think that this time can be used positively, and so practically engaging with college students can be difficult, as I can imagine, but maybe just, I think there's two aspects, and one would be to invite them into what you're doing, you know, include them and realize that they are in your house, and help them to realize that you want them to be a part, and that they're not, you know, kind of removed from life as it goes on normally at home. And secondly, just give them a little bit of space. You know, there's always going to be an adjustment period. With anything in life, with any seasons, there's going to be the transition back or the transition out, or whatever, any type of transition is going to have that adjustment period. So I think just giving them space and also including them will let them know that they are loved and that you care. And then hopefully they'll see that and they'll extend the same thing to you in return.
Right. All right, those are great thoughts, and I appreciate you sharing. I always want to end interviews with, if there's anything else that you would like to share with this audience, anything on your heart, any thing that you're learning personally, or any other tips for these moms, because here's what I know. We homeschooled, so you were home and we understood the dynamics of being together a lot. But many of these moms out here are ready to pull their hair out. They're trying to teach the lessons, they're trying to get meals prepared, maybe they're off work, or maybe they are still having to work from home and they're having to multitask, and it's just getting too much. The walls are closing in. Any tip on, you know, how these college students could, you know, come and maybe help a little bit? Maybe this is a time for service in the home instead of service hours that you're required to do for some of the colleges. Any other insights that you would just like to share, or maybe just a word for these moms?
Yes, so I think the biggest word that's been on the forefront of my mind during this whole time period is just perspective. And to me, that word carries a lot of weight, because sometimes I can get so much in my own head. I can get so caught up in my feelings and my thoughts and, you know, how I am doing life and how I'm accustomed to life and how I want things to happen. And it's so me, that I forget to step back and look at the bigger picture. And I feel confident that that's the case with a lot of people. My parents have always told me that, you know, sometimes you got to do what you got to do, and to always take that in stride. And I'm not minimizing by any means the stress or the workload that you're feeling as a mom who just got her world shifted upside down with handling kids and schooling and everything that just drastically changed seemingly overnight. I'm no way minimizing that, but I do want to encourage you to remain faithful, because the most pressing times in our life often tend to be the times of the most growth. And I know that I can testify to that with my own experiences. And so perspective always just keeps me grounded, and it brings me back to what really matters. And, you know, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get through this season of life, to be the best person that I can be, to honor God with how I'm living, with my attitude, to treat my family with respect, even sometimes when I don't want to, or I don't. It's frustrating, and, you know, you feel like you can't go anywhere, you can't do anything. But, you know, perspective always just brings me back to, okay, it's not about you. And I mentioned that I'm the oldest of 5. Well, my youngest brother is actually critically ill, and so he, without going into the details of that, he is in the high case scenario for coronavirus, and it just so happens that's my brother. But even if it's not, even if you don't have a relative who's in the critical zone or the high risk, you know, conditions, we still, as humans, we should be caring for the other, and we should be working together, unified, instead of dividing, to where we unite to help flatten the curve, so to speak, and to get through this as a nation, as a country, as a community, as families. And so perspective just always brings me back. And furthermore, as you know, it's always going to be stressful, and there's always going to be stress in life. And I know right now it's added stress, but I just hear stories of moms who've lost their children, or not to coronavirus, but just in the past, or who've lost a parent. And it just makes me think, you know, wow, I'm sitting here complaining, living in my home and being healthy and being with my siblings. I'm complaining about being with them, when I know families, I personally know multiple families who would give their life or anything, pay any amount of money, do anything to have that extra few hours or days in a house with people that I'm complaining to be with. So that has really convicted me, and just so many stories that I've heard, and I can't go into, but so many come to mind. and it all comes back to perspective and who you are and how you're impacting others, and perspective just brings you right where you need to be.
Wow, Shailene. Well, thank you so much. I am so proud to be your mom, and it is a joy to have you back and to be involved because we didn't see you near as much. And I just want to encourage all of you moms out there, hang on. This too shall pass. And I want to encourage you to get your college-age students, or I say students because I homeschool, but your college-age children involved in your life, and encourage them. Sometimes we can get upset and just want to wring their necks because we are different, we think differently, but let's celebrate our diversity, and hopefully this will all work out sooner than later. But thank you for tuning in to Inspire Moms Interviews, and we'll hopefully post one every few weeks, and it will always be a surprise. So Shada, you were a big surprise. Thank you so much. You are our first one as we launch this birthday week for me. Turning 50 is truly fabulous. Love being a mom, and I hope that through these interviews and other information on the blog that in some way that you will be inspired. Thanks again for tuning in to Inspire Moms Interview.